Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, a teacher with the Demon, and with me is Nathan Fox, one of the founders of lsatdemon.com and the weekly podcast Thinking LSAT. Nate, our email is from Ahmad, who has a question about LR choice confusion / trusting my prediction.
Hello, Demon Team. I've been preparing for the LSAT for a while now, and I seem to struggle with one thing when answering level 5 questions from questions 21 to 26 in the section, usually. I start with the prediction and then go through the choices. Let's say in this example, I chose answer B as it is the closest answer I have found to my prediction. Then, when I get to E, I switch to it because it is more convincing, or so I think. However, when doing the review, my first choice is always the right one. Is it a bad idea to stop reading the answer choices once I get to an answer that closely resembles my prediction? Thank you, Ahmad. I'll let you take first crack at it.
Great. I love this question. I love predictions. Ahmad's describing what I call, I describe it to my students in class. I say it's the only thing that they can do that can disappoint me. The only thing that they do that disappoints me is when they find their prediction, they pick it, and then I hear the words when they get to answer choice D or E, I didn't think about that. And it's like, well, the reason you didn't think about it is because it wasn't in the passage. And now you see an answer choice and you're like, I didn't think about it. And you start trying to find reasons why it might be right. And then you pick it. So that doesn't mean, Ahmad, you should stop reading the answer choices. That's not the takeaway I want you to take from this. You still need to check, because if it's something that's close to your prediction, there's a chance you find one that's better, and it's actually your prediction 100%. But you should trust your prediction. And when you find one that is derived from, or answers the question the same way as your prediction, maybe not the exact thing that you were looking for, you need to trust that prediction and not look for something else that's quote unquote more convincing.
I agree that if you have a strong prediction, especially on certain question types, like sufficient assumption questions or main conclusion questions, you do want to stick to your guns. I mean, you need to know the answer to a conclusion question. You need to know the answer to a sufficient assumption question. That said, you always need to read all 5. And there will be a better answer sometimes. For one, just because an answer sounds close to your prediction doesn't mean that it actually means the same thing.
Yep.
There's a big difference between like all X are Y and all Y are X.
Or some X are Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can change one word and change the meaning significantly enough to make an answer wrong. So you do always have to read all 5 answers. One thing that I think is happening to Ahmad here is a little bit of selection bias. Ahmad says, when I review, my first choice is always the right one. Yeah, when you review your mistakes. But when you don't review the ones that you got right, there's going to be plenty of times there where you changed from B to E. So the real thing is you got to read all 5 and you have to actually do the death match between those 2 answers. One of them's right for reasons, and one of them is wrong for reasons. So you're going to make a huge mistake here, Ahmad, if you just decide, as soon as I find the right answer, I'm just going to pick it and move on. No way, dude. You're going to make a lot of mistakes doing that. I would make a lot of mistakes if I tried to do that. Josh would make a lot of mistakes if Josh tried to do that. You do not want to try to do that. You will start finding in your review, there's a bunch of questions that I missed where I didn't even read the right answer. And that's not what you want. But I agree that it's a common mistake that students make, that they like start getting imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I predicted the answer. B says exactly what I predicted, but I'm going to read all 5 anyway, which you should. but then you start like looking for reasons why D is a better answer. You're looking for reasons why E is a better answer. And you're talking yourself into shit that's not even relevant to the argument. It's like not even answering the question at all.
Right.
And you're just like, well, but it can't be that easy, can it?
Well, and I didn't think about it, so there must be something that I missed.
Right. When
Yeah.
the truth is that every answer is wrong 80% of the time. And, if you made a good prediction and you feel like you found that prediction, well, then now the remaining answers, you've got to read them, but they're going to be right less than 80% of the time. Or sorry, they're going to be right less than 20% of the time. They're going to be wrong more than 80% of the time. They're going to be wrong like 95% of the time. So you do have to read all 5, but that doesn't mean that you're trying to turn wrong answers into right answers.
You're checking to make sure that you don't see. I've had an instance. It was a case of like the author was biased, and then it said therefore it must be wrong.
Yep.
And that, that flaw. And I predicted it. I found one. I thought that was my answer. It said something like it. And then I got to E and it said my prediction exactly. So I had 2 answers that I thought said the same thing. Right. And I went back and reread B and I was like, oh shoot, I misread something. Right.
Yeah.
And I realized, okay, that actually wasn't my prediction. It was backwards.
Right.
E is actually my prediction. I need to pick it. And if I'd stopped at B, I would have missed that one, like you were kind of talking about.
Half the time, the answer is B, but half the time, that answer is E. And so you've got to read all 5, and you've got to figure out which one actually is the answer and which one isn't. I agree that that's how it is most commonly for me if I'm in this situation. I'll even be like bragging to my class, like, oh yeah, that's it, slam dunk, that's what I predicted. We're going to end up picking that, but let's just make sure, let's read all 5.
Yep.
And then I get to C or D or E, and I'm like, oh shit, oh no. But that's okay. Then you just recover and you actually compare the two. Generally we're not like comparing answers to each other, but if you have 2 answers that you think are exactly what you predicted, then you do have to compare them to each other. But that's different from what Ahmad's asking about, right? Ahmad is trying to force square pegs into round holes by, he's got an answer that matches his prediction, and then he's got this other left field answer that he's just trying to make a weird backward case for it, which also, by the way, Ahmad, what you're not thinking about there is, okay, even if you do think that this other answer is correct, well, then now tell me what's wrong with that answer that you were about to pick. The one that matched your prediction, the one that you thought was great. If you're going to pick this other answer, you have to tell me what's wrong with that one.
Yeah, and that actually gets to something I wanted to talk a little bit about, because Ahmad says it's close to his prediction. And you highlighted earlier, close isn't always good enough. And when I have an answer choice that isn't exactly my prediction, I always identify how is it different than my prediction, and is that a meaningful difference? So, for example, if your prediction is something like all chimpanzees are aggressive, and then you find an answer choice that says all primates are aggressive, well, on a must be true, odds are that distinction is going to make a pretty big difference, because maybe they only proved chimpanzees, but they didn't prove all primates.
Sure.
But on a sufficient assumption question, all primates might cover your bases and make the argument true. And so it's not as big of a deal. So you always have to check, like, okay, if the language, if there's something different about the answer choice from your exact prediction, what was different? And is that still something that's acceptable when answering the question that's been posed to you? If yes, good, you found your prediction essentially, right? It's just the different phrasing than you had exactly picked. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's some substantial or meaningful difference in the context of the question, well, then you didn't find your prediction. You just found something with some of the same words.
Great. Thank you, Ahmad, for writing in. Hopefully that sorts you out a little bit. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you would like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.